Where in DC can you see world-class artists for free? The Library of Congress. They have presented live music in one of the city's most iconic spaces for more than 100 years. Join them for more than 25 concerts and events, from classical music to jazz, Broadway, popular music, and more. Tickets are available now at loc.gov/concerts. See a show that's sold out? Don't sweat it. The library offers day of rush passes to all performances. See what's coming up at loc.gov/concerts. Today on CityCast DC, we are rounding up the latest, biggest news. The Kennedy Center is going to be closed for 2 years. Snow removal enters the mayoral race, and DC got a huge bill from the National Guard. Joining me, I've got WAMU's Alex Koma and CityCast's Julia Karen. Today's Tuesday, February 3rd. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Alex Koma, Julia Karen, thanks so much for being here on this snow-creedy, icy day.
Hello.
Hey, Bridget, right back at ya.
So I'm sure as you all saw over the weekend, that wild Truth Social post from Trump about the Kennedy Center. Personally, I try to avoid the things that he say and the things that he says unless I feel like it's actually going to be of impact. And so I try to not react to every little thing that he says because, frankly, you'd be reacting all the time. But this one made it across my desk, if you will.
Yeah, as ever, it's difficult to know whether things he says will actually happen. In this case, I guess we have to assume that it will because he is basically like directing the board that he wholly appointed to vote to do this. And I mean, it's been just this source of, obsession for one, but embarrassment for another, that everyone has been, very prominently pulling out. Just Philip Glass in the last week, canceling his plans for a concert there. And so, you see people pulling out, you see the declining attendance. And then I guess in that sort of context, it makes sense. Yeah, sure. Why not shut it down for 2 years?
To be fair, it's also at a time when he was like, we're installing like marble armrests in the Kennedy Center. And I'm like, that's the biggest problem, not the fact that like people are trying to not perform there. There was a big time composer who said he wasn't going to perform. I think it was like his Lincoln aria or opera or some musical piece. And I'm like, 2 years to close the Kennedy Center, to fully rebuild it or just to repair it?
Well, that's the thing. It just was renovated. Like they just did that. I haven't been recently for obvious reasons, but the last time I was there, it was very obvious. They had just made changes to like the top deck in particular to make it a little less stuffy, a little less 1960s, like the bar actually was like a little bigger now, like that sort of thing. So, it's very funny that's his stated reason. But yes, I mean, you're right. There's not nearly enough marble in there. So I guess that process takes a while.
So Trump said that the one-time 2-year closure of the Kennedy Center would be, quote, the fastest way to bring the Trump Kennedy Center to the highest level of success, beauty, and grandeur, as opposed to partial closures for construction that would have to work in and around the performances. I'm with you. It was just renovated. I don't know. This is just the way my brain works. I think it's just a scam. I know. I mean, if you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, where they're describing how their various scams work, where they're like, "Oh, we bought the club, and if the numbers didn't work, we just burn it down for the insurance money, and it was all profit." That when I look at this, that's all I can think.
Do we think the insurance money at the Kennedy Center is in the hundreds of millions? Would it pay for snowcrete removal? I'm asking as a taxpayer, but it is ridiculous to me that like he wants to make it a money-making venture. Totally get it. Like, we live in a world that has capitalism. Cool. Wants to make money, but memberships have gone down. People are pulling out performances. Isn't the way to make money at the Kennedy Center to like have people performing there? And then even when they're doing this renovation, have some performances, maybe while they're trying to do construction. Isn't that how you would hypothetically make money?
Well, I think that's difficult because when you actually look at the caliber of artist who has pulled out and then the artists that they're slotting in, there was a post on Reddit over the weekend that showed the different comedy offerings they had. I'm not cherry picking this. It was Jeff Foxworthy and I can't remember his name, the guy who's not Jimmy Kimmel, who used to be on The Man Show.
Oh, Adam Carolla? Oh my God.
Adam Carolla, right?
Dane Cook, but like that's a cut.
Dane Cook I feel would be a step up even.
Adam Carolla has like truly got like COVID broke his brain. He is like a full vaccine truther. I didn't know about that, but sure, yeah, why not? That fits for the new Kennedy Center.
We should mention that this still needs board approval, but just as a reminder, Trump appointed the whole board, so I don't think that would be difficult to get that approval. You know, Alex, you mentioned something that I always try to keep in mind when I'm dealing with not just Trump statements, but Trump's like late night, over the weekend, Truth Social Trump statements in particular. Is it possible that he says this and it doesn't come to fruition because he is someone who is known to have a complicated relationship with the truth?
I think in this Trump term, even maybe more so than the last one, it's been the case that Trump still loses focus very easily. He just seems to have surrounded himself with enough weirdos who are able to maintain that focus, that if it is Stephen Miller on immigration, for instance, then even though Trump may be distracted, the various people who he seems to be supervising very minimally, if at all, remain focused on it. And Rick Grinnell, in this case, the former ambassador who has, sort of become the head of the Kennedy Center, other than Trump himself, of course, he does seem to be sufficiently worked up about all of this to try and see it through. So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. I guess the question is like, and Lord knows they haven't thought about this, but the question is, if you are shutting down the Kennedy Center for these 2 years, essentially, are you keeping on the staff? The staff that is still there, I mean, they've been, by all accounts, leaving in droves. I've heard just anecdotally of several Kennedy Center staff members who conditions working there are, it's an arts institution. It's already not awesome. They're not exactly like being paid the best. But then you're doing it for the mission, right? Because you believe in it. And then you kind of take that away with the Trump stuff. And that's like been very difficult for them to actually keep people working there. Will they still be working there? Will they have even more reason to go elsewhere after this? I've got to imagine so. Would you try and keep working there amid all of this? So how do you expect to have a staff to run the Kennedy Center when all this is over? Unless you're just planning on having it be like the true sycophants, the true Rick Grinnells of the world and nobody else, which maybe is the idea.
And we've done episodes about just how tough of a situation folks who do work in the arts are having in DC. DC's theater scene, the art scene is taking a hit because of financial changes and then also just the climate. And so I'm glad that you're highlighting the issue of what's going on with the staff, because even if this wasn't happening, I don't think that it's a chill time to be working in the arts right now in DC.
Yeah, my two big questions about this were, one, where are the performers going to go? We had, I think it was Phil Kennicott on, and the Kennedy Center has an opera house, and it's specifically built for the opera. Where do opera performers go in the DC metro area that actually allows for this to happen? And obviously, symphonies probably go somewhere else. But also, I feel like the question on everyone's mind whenever we do something like this is, can he do this? Obviously, the renaming is not really a thing that he can do, even though he put his name on it. But can he just tear down the Kennedy Center, or will their historic review board have to come in and stop it and approve the plans like they're trying to do with the ballroom? What is the situation here? Can he actually just tear this down on July 4th, 2026 on the 250th anniversary?
Well, that's the thing is, many of these, so, the National Capital Planning Commission, which is the one that reviews all this stuff, similar deal to the Kennedy Center board it is almost, entirely appointed by the president. There are local representatives to it. For instance, the mayor has a representative, the council chairman of the DC Council has a representative, but it is largely federally controlled, and much of the local power is advisory. So even if they say, we don't think this is a good idea to, tear down the East Wing of the White House or whatever, it's not 100% in their hands. Now, the Kennedy Center is kind of an unusual creation because it is like maybe a little more federally controlled than many of the buildings that would be, quasi-federal, but still overseen by the NCPC. So he may have, more latitude to make changes there than normal. But it does still need to be funded, I suppose. He needs money to do it, which would require Congress. Not that they have been particularly unwilling to give him money to do what he wants, at least, for now, when it's still controlled by Republicans. But I think the short answer is, yeah, he probably can do, pretty much anything of what he wants. The question is timing. I mean, this takes a very long time, much like the ballroom he's obsessed with, right? So that's for sure going to happen. Like, I'd be stunned if they didn't at least make substantial progress on it. But this, I don't know, I guess it's possible it could happen before his term is out, but I'm not putting bets on that.
What has the reaction been? Like, have we heard from the Kennedys? I imagine that they aren't thrilled.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody around, Washington associated with the Kennedy Center is perplexed by this because, Tom Sherwood, my colleague at WAMU, who's been doing this much longer than I have, notes that this is essentially a living monument to John F. Kennedy on the Potomac. It's extremely prominent. And so meddling with it, putting your name on it, it was, bad enough. Right. So, yes, I think it is safe to say that this has not found many takers around Washington thus far.
And I saw that a bunch of folks connected to the Kennedy Center were taking to social media to really decry this move. And so I do think it's interesting that folks are being so vocal. So many artists, so many folks associated with the arts have been speaking out. I saw this very compelling video of the songwriter Ben Folds talking about just when he knew from an arts administration standpoint that this wasn't going to work out. I feel like when Ben Folds is taking it to the public to call you out, you really have a problem.
Yeah, he's long been pretty involved with Kennedy Center programming, which plenty of people have raised, quibbles with in the arts community before. Oh, is the Kennedy Center too, stuffy? If Ben Folds is your attempt to be, edgy and hip, a guy who was big when I was, a teen, so, fair enough. But obviously that has now, I think everybody would take Ben Folds right about now relative to the Adam Carollas of the world.
Just to stick up for Ben Folds, I saw him, I think at Wolf Trap not that long ago, and he put on a great show. So I'm not gonna let some Ben Folds slander slide on my program.
I love him. I love the Ben Folds 5. It's just that is the target, if you're trying to attract a younger audience, is my 33-year-old taste what they want? I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't think the teens are jamming out to Brick, maybe. Fair enough.
I'd be surprised, yeah.
Ready for discovery? South by Southwest is where the world's most curious, inspired, and eclectic minds gather to shape what's next. It's the ultimate gathering for the global creative community, where thought leaders, filmmakers, musicians, and other professionals across industries share the same space. Innovation, film and TV, music, and culture all collide when the 2026 South by Southwest conferences and festivals take over Austin, Texas, this March 12th through 18th. For one electric week, the city becomes a playground for boundary-pushing ideas, world premieres, and live performances that turn into beneficial experiences. Gain real access to new ideas, people, and opportunities that don't happen anywhere else. It's a citywide experience built on curiosity, connection, and the thrill of discovering something before everyone else. Start planning your adventure and secure your badge now at sxsw.com/DC. So as we are talking about this, right before we got on, I live on a street adjacent to a street that is notably kind of tricky for snow and ice. People get stuck on it. And I could not believe when I looked out the window just now, and you might hear it in the background, there were 3 bobcats doing snow removal on this little triangle side street. I have lived here for many, many years, for over 10 years. I have never seen this before. The snowcrete in DC has been such a situation. Mayor Bowser held a presser yesterday. We know she's retiring. We had a conversation with Seagraves about this, about what the mayor's legacy was going to be once she is no longer in office. I didn't really see a snowcrete disaster creeping in at the last second.
Yeah, this has been a real test of the mayor, whose kind of whole brand is, frankly, like, hey, I might not be flashy or whatever, but I make the city, run. I make the city function as it should. Core government services, that's a watchword of the Bowser administration. And yeah, that's been put to the test. I think that most cities in DC's position would struggle with this. I will I will bash the mayor on any occasion, and certainly living on a street that is still not fully plowed, I have good reason to. That being said, DC, right, we normally get bailed out by like a 40-degree day after a snowstorm. This just sort of hasn't happened. It's unusually hard snow. That being said, the real lack of communication, I think, is what had people tearing their hair out, where, other cities, are experiencing this as well, but at least sort of had the decency to talk through, like, hey, this is not going according to plan. You need to be prepared for this. We are likely to keep schools closed for X amount of time. But instead, the city wasn't really doing that. I mean, the school closures in particular, announcing it at like 5 p.m. each day, it had parents tearing their hair out, where, other surrounding counties are saying, yeah, listen, we're closing all week. We're not going to open. You have to make other plans. And I think you've seen a real rush in the last few days after the mayor was taking this intense criticism. She may not be running for re-election, but she still is very image conscious. And you've seen, okay, they're hiring more contractors. They're getting more teams out with, ice picks to actually break up the ice. They're trying to start trash collection. They're distributing salt for free for people, which, again, seems like a thing they could have done before the storm. But let it not be said that bad publicity cannot move government officials, even if it takes a little longer than we would have liked.
But I also feel like it's too little too late. And at some point, is this just weaponized incompetence from your government? Like, you knew the snowstorm was coming. And I said this on the Friday News Roundup. You knew the snowstorm was coming. You did plow some of the major arteries. Cool. You put salt down on the major arteries. Cool. As soon as the ice hits and there's no communication about hey, heads up, people, maybe you need to actually shovel your sidewalks. And then, by the way, they reversed that and said, oh, you actually don't have to. At some point, is it just we are incompetent at doing this thing, and whoever is mayor next should figure it out? Janice Lewis-George took to social media and put out a 10-tweet X thread about what she wants to do. Kenyon McDuffie wants a removal task force. Is Bowser just weaponizing incompetence here on snow?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is certainly the case, and Janice Lewis-George laid out this a bit, the Ward 4 council member running for mayor, that one of the issues is that a lot of this work that would sort of ordinarily be done in-house, essentially employees at the Department of Public Works, has been farmed out to contractors. And that those contractors are, the benefit is you're not paying people, they're not on salary, but you are able to sort of, add or subtract more as you need them. But the downside to that is that they are not as reliable as city workers. You have less control over, what they're doing. There's an intense demand for contractors throughout, this storm. We've seen some unconfirmed reports, but persuasive ones on social media that some of these contractors have been experiencing staff shortages because many of their workers are immigrants who have been freaked out by the ice presence in the city, the other kind of ice. And so I think that it is definitely the case that you can look at the places where the system failed in DC and wonder, whether it couldn't have been managed better. But I just come back to the communication bit, which Bowser has never been especially strong at. She has never been especially good at admitting when things don't go well and that she has capacity to do better. I think you've seen that in much of her very dismissive public communication where she's like, essentially making excuses and not admitting that things have not gone well and like asking for patience, which I think would go a very long way. I think people are willing to be understanding. You've seen people like pull together in many ways to help on their own and fill the gaps where the city has failed. But you can't point the finger back at people and be like, well, you should have done more shoveling. That's not what they want to hear from their government right now.
And I think, especially when it comes to schools, I saw this really acutely during COVID. When you really need to have communication about what's happening with kids in schools. If kids aren't going to school, there's a breakdown that occurs for all parents, but especially working parents, where you just cannot have your day function the way that it's supposed to function. And so I think, as you said, the choice to wait till late in the day to make these calls, I can understand why parents were tearing their hair out. And I think we learned from COVID that messing with kids and schools, it does not bode well. People do not like it.
It's not even just the parents, too. Like, the teachers union were like, we can't get to school. Like, you might have plowed the front of the street, but we can't park places. The sidewalks are still dangerous. Like, we can't even get in.
Yeah, this was a huge issue, both for parents and for, the staff. I mean, there were reports from the teachers union of schools where, just a small percentage of staff could actually make it in and an even smaller percentage of students. And look, this is not going to come as a huge surprise, but schools east of the river had less attendance because the plowing over there was worse. It's just a fact of life that things in the city tend to fall along the same racial class divides, where the western half of the city, you were seeing photos of Georgetown on M Street or whatever, that was perfectly plowed. Well, I was seeing photos from people in Ward 8 that even up until a day or two ago hadn't even seen a plow in their street. And then you're supposed to get your kid to school or go to work at school in that environment. And so you had this very uneven, response to the schools reopening, where parents are, of course, anxious to get their kids back in school if they're working. But if you're east of the river and things haven't been plowed as well, you can't get there, then you're pissed at the mayor for, reopening without giving you the tools to do it and pointing at you and saying, why aren't you getting your kid to school kind of thing. So it was a real, I would say, lesson, but the mayor will hopefully not be with us through another one of these large snowstorms unless we're very unlucky over these next few months.
God, I hope
but
not.
Perhaps a lesson for the people hoping to replace her, like Janice Lewis George and Kenyon McDuffie.
Now is the time, when we're going to have a couple of sunny days in the 30s. Truly a miracle. Get those shovels up, people. The time is now.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of who might come next, one person that we know is not going to be mayor is Randy Clark. The Metro has actually done a pretty solid job, per most people's take on handling this, to the point where Randy Clark had to come out and say, thanks, guys, but I'm not actually planning on running for mayor. You could stop asking me. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a relief that we no longer have to hear about this. It largely a story pushed by Axios DC and some very vocal people on Twitter. But what are we doing here, guys? Randy Clark is a nice guy and by all accounts a very competent administrator. He has also been here for 3 years, I believe, and is a white Canadian man. He was not going to be the mayor. Sorry, Matt Iglesias. It wasn't going to happen. But, I appreciate that people were so interested in the mayoral race, even if they were maybe placing their ambitions in the wrong place. As I said when he was on the Politics Hour last week, maybe the most important factor in his decision, other than the fact that he couldn't win, is that the Metro general manager gets paid about double what the mayor does. So, why take a pay cut for the extra headaches?
One of the things that the mayor said is that the National Guard is going to be doing some snow removal, which I think I was seeing a lot of people say, the National Guard is here, why don't they remove the snow? But we also got a little bit of insight into what that might cost recently, because We got the bill for how much it cost in 2025 to have the National Guard in D.C., $223 million. And it actually might be higher because big picture, the deployment of troops to 6 U.S. cities cost nearly $500 million, with a B, dollars total. This is according to the CBO's new findings released on Wednesday. They're talking about how this includes lodging, benefits, food, transportation. Pretty costly. I feel like there might be cheaper ways to do snow removal in cities, but what do I know?
Well, that's the thing, is the DC National Guard is the one doing the snow removal. Those expenses that you're talking about largely includes all the Guard's troops from other states. And those are the ones who are doing a whole lot of nothing, that are mostly just standing around looking cold or huddling in metro stations for warmth these days. This is actually something that we were asking Randy Clark when he was on the show, was like, we see the National Guard all over Metro, right? And so we were asking him, are you able to ask them for help? Just tell them like what would be helpful, like for you to do. Like, for instance, like I think it was on everyone's minds, which was they're standing right there, put a shovel in their hands, half these bus stops and metro stations, you couldn't walk around without, tripping over the ice. And he basically said, they'll listen, kind of like to our directions, especially like individual guardsmen. If you're just like, hey, can you stand over here? Or for instance, he said that he asked them to carry like pistols in the stations versus like the really long guns, so as to be like less intimidating. But by and large, I mean, he has no control over what they do, and it really like drives the point home how like ridiculous this is. They're meant to be like helping us, but during the thing that the National Guard exists for, which is natural disaster response, they were completely absent. They were as snowed in as the rest of us, which really drives home, how silly it is that we're spending all this money for a lot of nothing.
I will say, so the Congressional Budget Office that did this report on how much the National Guard is costing the city. We've heard that they're slated to stay for 2026. For the majority of 2026, they're not really going anywhere. Will they cost more? The math that the Congressional Budget Office did is that for every extra month, DC's at $55 million for every extra month. That's assuming that they have their peak deployment size number of 2,950 personnel. If you do some quick like napkin math, that's $666 million next year just for DC. Can those dollars go towards like snowcrete removal right now? Those are my tax dollars at work, man. I want it to happen. Get that snowcrete out of here if they're going to cost $666 million.
I mean, for a while, they were mulching the parks and everything. Remember that? That remains the most useful thing that they've done. So I know they've got shovels. I know they know how to use them. Get them out there.
And Julia, as you were just saying, since we know the National Guard is slated to stay on for 2026, all of the implications and costs therein, if folks want to stay abreast on the changes there, how it might impact all of us, do you have any suggestions of how they can do that?
You can become a CityCast DC neighbor is what you can do. As you guys know, we've been covering this since they started in roughly July, August-ish. Alex has been a great resource at WAMU. He's on our show all the time. If you become a member, it's $10 a month, $100 for the year. You also get sweet perks like members events. You get an extra events email from Kayla, our newsletter writer. It's fabulous. I highly recommend it. And also you're supporting local news at a time when maybe the mayor can't get the information out to you, but we certainly can.
So just check out membership.citycast.fm and become a neighbor today. Well, Alex, Julia, hopefully neither of us is going to bust our butt on snowcrete. Thank you so much for being here. Stay warm.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. As I've said, I've heard that the best way to take it apart is with a hammer. So, stay safe hammering away out there.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen people who are skating on the National Mall. They broke their skates out. I might have to join them if I can get my car out of my alley. That might be number one on the to-do list this evening.
That is all for today here on CityCast DC. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.